Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be talking about the best one-trick champions for each role. So I'm going to tell you which 2 champions I think are the best to one-trick for each role, and then I have 6 honorable mentions for each role. And I'm going to go into detail about the 2 that I picked, and then just really quickly go over the other ones as I go down. I'm going to try my best to make this a quicker video. I'm going to try to make a video every day or 2 that's about some topic between maybe 20 to 30 minutes, just to give you some more insight into the game, just to kind of complement the longer guides that I have on the channel as well. Because I know some newer viewers get scared off by the long guides because they don't understand it has, good timestamps and the Google Doc and all that. Speaking of which, in the description, if you don't want to watch the whole thing, it will have timestamps, so you can jump around to your favorite positions that you want to hear about, and you can also access this Google Doc in the description. Okay, so let's get in here. So, what is a one-trick? Why should you one-trick? One-tricking is a term that people use to mean play one champion a lot, almost exclusively. So you're going to be playing 80% of your games or more on a single champion. I would probably call it one-trick. It's just a rough percentage, but you pretty much play the same champion every game, or you try to. Okay, and so what is the advantage of this? Why would people do this? Well, you get a ton of experience on a champion, especially with matchups and game states. So especially, let me see here. A lot of the top ladder people are one-trick type of people. Okay, so if you look at like MLGB Blade, he plays a lot of Akali. Okay, so 270 games are Akali. Now he does have 154 Irelia as well, but he's pretty much an Akali player. Can't think of other ones. Like Viper is pretty much a Riven player, I believe. Yeah, a lot of Riven, and there's one guy up here, I don't remember his name. There's like a Pantheon player. So they're just like certain players that just play a lot of one champion. Now, it's not everybody who's successful. For example, like I'm a Cutie Pie, plays a ton of different champions. You can see he played a lot of Twitch, but he also plays a lot of Jhin, a decent amount of like Vayne, Varus, and so on and so forth. So one-tricking can be a good way to be very successful at the game, but it's not the only way to be successful at the game. But a lot of people like it, like the concept of it, just really playing one champion that you enjoy and becoming a true master of the champion. And the advantage is you get a lot of experience. You also have very consistent gameplay because you play the champion all the time, and so you know those matchups, you know what to do, and you're in the zone. You go in there and it starts to become intuitive. Like you know exactly when you should do your skill shots, you know exactly which items you should buy at which spots. You don't even have to think about it. And so that frees up some of your mental power to focus on other aspects of the game. So you can focus better on your macro because you already know, what you should be doing in the matchup that you're playing in lane. You already have your last hitting mechanics down because you're so used to the animations and the different sort of damage thresholds of your abilities, your auto attacks. So you're going to be able to focus a lot more on the game state to figure out, like, pressing tab a lot to figure out what you need to know, like who's strong, who do you need to avoid, where should you be going in terms of macro, which objectives should you be prioritizing. All of these are things that you can do a lot better if you're not having to think about what does my champion do or what should I do in this matchup. Whereas if you're newer to a champion, if you have, less than 20 games on them, you're probably still thinking questions like, what should I be doing here? What should I be leveling up? Which item should I get? And that just takes away from some of your mental power. So it allows you to have more consistent gameplay over time because you have all of this experience. Now, an argument against one-tricking would be you're susceptible to meta shifts. So if you one-trick something that relies very heavily on a certain set of items or certain team compositions, then that may fall very much out of favor if the meta shifts around. So for example, someone like Jace is very early game meta dependent, and a lot of his power comes from lethality items, which are very mercurial, right? So they go, sometimes they're really strong and sometimes they're not strong. They're very difficult for Riot to balance. And so right now they're pretty strong, but for a lot of the season they weren't very strong. And so you're kind of up to the whim of those items. Like he doesn't really have another item build. I guess he could go like a mana immune poke build or something, but lethality gets a lot of attention from... Now, there are other champions on this list you'll see that are also lethality users. And Jace is a very, he is a good one trick to consider. But that's just an example. I'm trying to think of something else. Like, a lot of the tanks have risen to power off of those tank items. And if those items get nerfed, they're just not going to be as good. So, and obviously, like, direct nerfs to the champion. So champions that draw a lot of attention that are probably going to get nerfed. So, for example, if we look at champion.gg, and I'm going to be looking at this throughout. If you wanted to try to one-trick Leona, for example, right now, she's drawing a lot of attention. She has a lot of wins. She's very powerful. Something about this champion will get nerfed, okay? You better believe it. Something about Sona is going to get nerfed. I know the Sona nerfs are coming next patch. I think there's a slap on the wrist for Leona. But something about these champions are going to be nerfed. And at least Leona, she's very strong right now. I play her a lot. I have a lot of success with her. But historically, she has a lot of problems. And I talk about my Leona guy. She's a very, very risky pick, and she's very meta-dependent. If she's not overpowered, then she's not viable a lot of the time. So that can be a thing, is if you try to one-trick a champion that draws a lot of attention, that has a high potential to get nerfed, or some of their core items could get nerfed. Then that makes it very difficult to one-trick that champion. Another reason is if you get assigned an off-roll. So if you one-trick and you play Teemo every single game, well, what happens when, you know, you get assigned support? I guess you could try to play Teemo support, but it just makes it a lot more difficult to successfully one-trick if you get placed in your off-rolls. Unless you play a champion that can play multiple roles. So that's kind of the problem, is because you won't have experience with those roles. You won't have experience with other champions because you're so used to playing your one champion over and over again that is a risk. As a support player, and I know a lot of people on this channel are support players, that's a lot less likely to happen to you because you're not going to get auto-filled, and you're very rarely going to get put in your secondary role. So one-tricking is a little bit more viable from the support role because you don't have to worry about the difficulty of, you know, not getting enough practice on other roles. But that is just something to consider. So I think the best of both worlds is, if you're going to one-trick, try to at least have a couple of other champions up your sleeve. So try to what I call three-trick. You know, have a core champion that you enjoy playing, but have a couple of other champions you can also play. And ideally champions that I think are different styles that are good in different metas. So for example, if you really like to play Thresh, maybe also think about picking up Janna, just because she also provides peel, but she's much better in a meta that's dominated by enchanters, which we saw for the last, 10 patches or so until recently. Maybe not 10, but like 6 patches until recently, because of the support itemization. And then maybe have like an AP champion, like a Zyra up your sleeve, just in case your team has all AD and you need an AP threat or something like that. So just try to think of situations where your one-trick champion is not going to be strong, and then have some alternative picks that can counteract those situations where you may not want to pick your one trick. So what are the good qualities of a one trick? And then we'll get into the one tricks themselves. So it needs to be a champion that is rarely picked or banned. This is pretty obvious, but if you can't actually pick your champion, then it's not going to be a good champion to one-trick. So if it's something like, if you're in Bronze and you want to one-trick Blitzcrank, he's banned a lot in Bronze play, and that's why he wasn't at the top of my list. Although he's a very good champion to one-trick, he's banned a lot because people really hate him all the time. So he's always banned. Things that are getting a lot of pro play attention, so in pro plays in season and the pros, I'll start playing Janna, for example. I still think she's a good champion in one trick because she doesn't get a lot of pro attention a lot of the time. But if it is something that's getting a lot of attention, like Lee Sin or Orianna, Azir, Sejuani, and Malachi are getting a lot of attention lately. Like, this complicates it because that's going to create two problems if pros are playing champions a lot. And this is kind of counterintuitive because some people think, oh, I want to one-trick exactly what the pros are playing. You don't. You want to one-trick things that are kind of under the radar, that are really strong. Because if you one-trick things that pros are playing, number one, it's going to get picked a lot or banned a lot, which is the point I'm talking about now. Then also, there's a very high probability that it's going to get nerfed. If it's really good in pro play over a consistent period of time, it's probably going to get nerfed. Jarvan is the huge question mark here. Why hasn't he been nerfed in like 13 patches? No one knows, but that's rare, right? Like, usually Riot identifies, okay, this champion is ridiculously overpowered, we need to nerf it. Jarvan's an exception to the rule. Most of the time, champions do get nerfed if they're too good in pro play. And so trying to emulate the pros and one-trick things that are really hot can be problematic because they're going to get picked or banned a lot, or they're going to get directly nerfed. Okay, it needs to be a champion that has lots of influence in many different styles of games. So this is what people call carry. I'm more comfortable with the term influence because carry seems to imply that you have to get all the kills, you have to do the most damage. And a lot of the champions that I list will do that, but especially when it comes to supports, they don't necessarily have to do that. But influence, you're having an outsized influence on the game. You're making plays, or you're doing a lot of damage, or you're protecting key targets. You're doing something that is defining who's going to win the game. You're having a major influence on the game. And so it needs to be something where you have a major influence. If you're just kind of loafing around, just sort of doing about as well as your team does, you're not really going to climb that much. So you want to play something where you're going to have an outsized influence on the game, where you're going to be one of the major factors why you win the game a lot. Okay, and there are several different things that can mean, and we'll talk about it here in just a second. Champions relevant mini game states. That's the same thing here. If it's a champion that's like only good like in the early game and falls off really hard late game, like Lee Sin. I'm talking about Lee because a lot of people try to one-trick Lee, and I don't think that's a good idea. But Lee Sin's a great example of someone who powers up really hardcore early game if he gets ahead, but then falls off hard late. So he's not good in the late game. Now, there are some champions that aren't as great in the early game, but scale really hard in the late game. I think that's a formula you're going to want a lot more of, especially if you're in silver, bronze, gold, where games are going to go on a little bit longer. So it needs to be good in a lot of different game states. If it's only good under certain conditions, it's not going to be as powerful as things that are good in all game states. Now, some champions aren't good unless they get a decent chunk of gold. A lot of these champions are, but they just have a way, if they stay in the game, of being very relevant late game and almost unstoppable. So Kassadin's a great example of this, where, yeah, you can kind of contain him early. I've seen a Kassadin go 0-4 in lane, and then the game gets to, like, 25 minutes, and he's got his Rod of the Ages and Witchbane, and then all of a sudden he goes from 0-4 to, like, 10-4 and takes over the game. And so he still has a really strong influence, even in a game state where he's really far behind, because he's able to catch back up. So that's an important quality of one trick as well. Needs to be resilient to meta shifts. I've talked about this before. It needs to be a champion that's not super heavily reliant upon either being overpowered himself or herself, or relying on an item or like a rune that's super overpowered, that's probably going to get nerfed. So if the game shifts around, ideally these champions are still going to be good just because their kit and their playstyle is just classic, for solo queue. It's just something that's almost always going to be good in solo queue, just based on what they do. So yes, the stats of their items do matter. The kinds of champions they're playing with and against do matter. So the metagame does matter, but they're still going to be relevant, right? So they may not be as overpowered as they were at different points in League's history, but they're still going to be powerful most of the time if you're very good on that champion. And that gets to a quality that I didn't mention here, but usually it's something that's high skill cap, because the skill cap gates people from playing it. So what that means is that things that are really hard to play, that's not always true, I guess, but it's less likely to get nerfed if it requires more skill, because it's not going to draw as much attention in solo queue, because people won't be able to play the champion correctly. Thresh is a great example of this. Most people can't play Thresh very well. He's the hardest support in the game to play. He does draw a lot of pro attention. He hasn't lately, though. But historically, he's one of the most played supports. Probably the most powerful and influential support of all time, I would argue, since his inception. I think it was season 2 or 3. But people just do not play him very well. He's fairly popular in solo queue, but because they don't play him as well, he just hasn't received direct nerfs in a very long time. But he's very strong if you're good with him. So that's a great example. Other examples would be things like Riven, Fiora, Akali, Katarina. We'll get into all those type of champions here in just a little bit. But usually it's things that are harder to play, where you're rewarded for one-tricking it because you become a lot better, and other people just aren't as good, so the champion's less likely to get nerfed. Unless it draws a lot of pro attention. Like Fiora is one that has drawn some pro attention, but Riven would be like a quintessential example. One of the hardest champions in the game to play. Good in solo queue, really bad in pro play. Okay, champion has good solo queue quality, so pretty good at the Fiesta. So you'll see this is the quality of a lot of champions. They're usually pretty good at one-on-one. They scale really hard with items. They have really strong roam potential. And oftentimes they have other kinds of utility, like they can split push very well, or they can take objectives very well. They have a lot of the influence that I'm talking about, and they're very good at that Fiesta style of play, where they're not going to get shut down by organized, like targeted strategies, like will happen in pro play. Riven, once again, great example of this. She can just take over a game if she gets ahead and people don't camp her. And she can just run around and pick people off who are trying to solo split push or just hanging out in their jungle without any support later on in the game, without any vision. So just champions that are very good at the Fiesta and solo queue kind of play are usually going to be very good one-tricks. Okay, so let's get into these one-tricks here. Oh, I gotta speed up. It always takes so long. I'm trying. Okay, we'll see if we can get it under 45 minutes. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it 20 to 30. It's just impossible. I just explain things too much for it to get down to that. Okay, so top one tricks by role. All right, so we have top lane. All right, Fiora and Camille. Look at these really quickly. So Fiora, I think, is number one. The thing about Fiora is she can solo very well if you're good with her. And her riposte is one of the strongest abilities in the whole game. I mean, it basically counters anything that comes at you, any crowd control and damage that comes at you, and it has an extremely high skill cap, so you have to have really quick reflexes to get a lot of these skills. So, for example, you know, if Malphite's about to ult you point blank, you can riposte that and you will crush him. If you miss the riposte, he will probably crush you. You know, other examples might be if Renekton's trying to go in and hit you with his little his W ability to stun you, or Jax is trying to jump on you and, you know, hit you with his E ability. And at high levels of play, there's a lot of gamesmanship to this. People try to bait your riposte, but it's all about getting that riposte down. That's what really defines a good Fiora player. If you get that riposte, if you counter key abilities. I've had Fiora's counter exhaust. I've tried to exhaust him as support before, and they riposted it. I'm like, how? That doesn't even have an animation. They just like anticipated I was going to try to exhaust him and riposted it, and that was super frustrating. So yeah, it even blocks summoners like riposte or like exhaust. So yeah, very, very good. She has very high scaling. So she's great at one-on-one, great high scaling, has really good utility with her riposte. She's great at killing tanks too. So she's very good at assassinating squishies, but she's also very good at killing tanks. And that's something that a lot of these other top lane one tricks that are really good have a harder time with. So like Riven, Pantheon, Akali, Yasuo, these champions are going to have a harder time with tanks than Fiora is. And that's why she tops them on my list, because she's very good at versus squishies and versus tanks. She's good 1v1. She's good at split pushing. She's okay in team fights, because if you get in there and get a kill in a team fight, then you're going to get the victory zone that's going to heal up your whole team. Basically, it's going to be over with. If you proc this in a fight and your team stands in it, you win. So you don't even have to get the kill. You just put it on someone who's about to die. And so she has really good team fight utility as well. So she's pretty good at almost all points in the game. She's pretty strong early. She's exceptionally strong late. She's good on 1, 2, and 3 items. She has great power spikes, nice smooth curve. She has a really high skill ceiling with riposte, so you're rewarded, and it's a lot of fun to learn her. I have tried to learn her. I'm not great on her, but it's just so rewarding and awesome when you block a skill shot with the riposte. So she's my number one. And if you look at champion.gg, now this isn't the only thing you should look at, and I was just looking at only Platinum Plus. You can look at other things as well if you want. But a good stat to look at here. Now, a lot of these champions are not going to have a high win rate either, as I said before, because a lot of people are going to fail on them because they're really hard to play. And they're not going to draw a lot of attention. So she's only got a 47% win rate. So if you look at this, but look at that win rate on games played. When you play over 200 games with Fiora, you go from a 47 or 48 average win rate all the way up to 56. So that just lets you know, if you put the time in on this champion, you're probably going to win a lot of games, because it just goes up and up. And that's the kind of chart you want to see based on experience. And the game length, she gets a lot better as the game goes on. I think she's a lot better than that implies for really good players on her. But she's strong. Then you can look at this page, just look at champion.gg if you want ideas for runes. I'm not an expert on these champions in terms of runes, but, I think some version of Press the Attack is probably pretty good. Gathering Storm's probably pretty greedy. I guess you can go that. I would probably go something like Scorch to have more pressure in lane, but anyways, I don't have time to go in all the runes because I want to try to earnestly get through this in about 30 minutes. But that's Fiora. She's good. A lot of true damage, good sustain, good team fighting, good split push, great power spikes at 1, 2, and 3 items, so on and so forth. Awesome champion. Another one that I want to mention is Camille. Fiora was my obvious top pick, but I think that it's harder to pick the other ones. There are a lot of other good top laners. So like Riven is really good. Akali, Jax. Yasuo is okay. I don't recommend it. Yasuo is just too dangerous. I don't recommend him. He's okay. Singed is a pretty good one trick. So there are a lot of good one tricks. But Camille ended up taking the cake for me because she's very similar to Fiora. I don't think she's as good as Fiora, but she's similar. And what I mean by that is she's very good at assassinating squishies, particularly with her ult, locking down, killing a target. So she's great at getting on that Twitch, for example, on that backline, or that Tristana, making sure she can't jump away. So she's good at killing priority targets. But she's also pretty good at killing tanks because she gets the true damage as well on her Q. So she's pretty decent at hacking through tanks as well. So can kill squishies, she can kill tanks. She has a pretty good laning phase. She's relatively safe. She can jump away with her hook shot if you're getting ganked. Really good roam potential with the hook shot. Very high skill cap. She has a lot of auto attack resets with her Q. Skill shots with her hook. You can actually dodge things with her Hextech ultimatum. You don't see this a lot in solo queue, but pro players can do it. When she jumps in the air, she becomes untargetable. So if someone's trying to hit you, let's say like a Nautilus missile or something like that, you can like jump it, and it'll just cancel it. And there are all kinds of skill shots and just other abilities that you can cancel with that. So there's a lot of outplay potential with the Hextech ultimatum. So she becomes untargetable for that half a second, or it's like a quarter of a second. It's really fast when she jumps to somebody. So really rewarding to play, really fun, very high damage output. And yeah, I think that makes her really strong. Good split push. Pretty good team fight. Her team fight's not as good as Fiora, but it's pretty good because you can single out key targets. So she has really good pick potential. Probably better pick potential than Fiora does. And then similarly, she's going to be pretty far down the list, most likely. And those champions are not super heavily reliant on any one particular item or two either. I mean, Fiora does like Trinity Force is really popular now with her because her base AD went up. Camille always likes Trinity Force as well. That item isn't really getting too much attention. Like, I don't think it's going to be nerfed. Now, her win rate doesn't have that same kind of smoothness to it, but you can still get up to like 56% when you get a lot of games. So it obviously has a huge improvement when you go up. So yeah, pretty good. And she has resilience. She obviously, she's going to like to go the Hydras. Hydras probably aren't going to get nerfed. If anything, Titanic Hydra would get nerfed rather than Ravenous. So her items are pretty safe. They're unlikely to get nerfed. She has been nerfed a lot. She got nerfed a lot last season. She was really overpowered at the beginning of the season. But I think they're pretty much through nerfing her, and they've actually given her a couple of buffs recently. So I think she's a good choice. Okay, so other good choices. We've got Pantheon, quintessential booster champion. I try to put an easy one in here too, a relatively easy mechanical champion. I try to do that with each one of these so you don't have to be a mechanical god to play these champions. Because a lot of the champions that are the best are going to have tougher mechanics that are the best one tricks. Because once again, those mechanics hold people down. It keeps people from realizing the true potential of these champions, which means those champions aren't going to be nerfed because they're going to have a lower win rate. Right? And so the tough mechanics are actually really good when you want to one-trick something because it keeps other people from playing those champions. A lot of times. Not always. I mean, obviously, Yasuo is very popular. Vayne's popular. Lee Sin's popular. Sometimes people just play champions that they don't know how to play. Right? A lot. They're just popular for whatever reason. These two aren't super popular right now, though. And I tried to pick things, once again, with the criteria up here that aren't super popular so that they're not going to be picked or banned all the time. But Pantheon is just a really simple mechanical champion who's very, very effective. He's almost always going to be a top 10 champ. He's very oppressive in lane. I would say in bronze and silver, he's just a complete stomper. Let me see if I go down to bronze here. He actually goes down in bronze. Wow. It's probably because people don't leverage his ultimate enough. but he's very oppressive in lane. Yeah, he starts moving up a little bit. It's because they probably stomp and get ahead in lane, and then they don't use the ultimate enough to carry their advantage to other lanes. So that's one of the core things about Pantheon that's really strong, is not only is he a lane bully, not only does he take over lane, but he can also use his ultimate to go roam, especially if he takes teleport and doesn't take ignite like a dunce. I mean, a lot of people do take ignite with him. I still think teleport's better because that allows you to roam bottom and drop in bottom and then teleport top before you lose your tower. But it just depends. I guess the ignite gives you better kill pressure in lane, but teleport gives you much better macro pressure. I'd prefer the macro pressure, but obviously he starts losing when the game goes downhill, so he kind of has that effect that I talked about with Lee Sin, where you have to close out quickly or he's just not going to be as good. But he is oppressive in lane. He does a ton of damage. Lethality's obviously really good on him. But I think that he can still survive even if Lethality's not in a great spot. Like, he can go Cleaver, and then there are other types of items that he can get. And he has really high AD ratios, so even if they nerf the Lethality, you know, he'll still be decent with something like a Duskblade, Ghostblade. Because oftentimes, especially with really squishy targets, if he gets on him, he's going to overkill him. So he's somewhat resilient. He's just always going to be kind of a good, like, solo queue stomp champion. You just get ahead in lane. He has excellent gank pressure, so like if your jungler comes in there, you can easily jump on him and get a kill for the jungler. You get ahead, you can go roam middle, you can go roam bot. If you get vision in the jungle, you can go roam in the jungle. Like, you just have lots of potential. He's really good with wombo combo teams, so if like an Amumu engages, you can drop in after the Amumu ults or the Kennen ults. Like Ash Arrow, somebody you can jump in. So he has really good and that does a lot of damage when he drops in too, like area of effect damage, not just single target. So he's just really good in a lot of different compositions. Obviously, he's not going to be as impactful later in the game typically because he can get crowd controlled really hard. But he just has that potential to take over a game by himself, and he's probably the best, simplest champion in terms of one trick that I would recommend. Riven's another one. Very good. I think she has a much worse matchups against tanks, who are really popular historically in the top lane. She can take over. She doesn't have a lot of utility. Like, she's okay at team fights. But I would say that like a good Fiora or Camille can still beat her. It just depends. Those are skill matchups. But I just feel like these champions have a bit more utility to them than Riven. They can get to the backline easier if they don't have flash. Like Riven has to have flash to get onto the backline a lot of the times. So Riven is a very good champion. There are lots of good one-trick Rivens historically that have risen very far on the ladder. She is very strong. I just feel like she's extremely hard to play too. She's far harder to play than Camille or Fiora, and those two are pretty hard to play. So she's very, very hard to play. She's somewhat item dependent. I mean, she does, like, lethality is very good on her, just as is on Pantheon. Now, these two don't need lethality, once again. So they are much less likely, if lethality gets nerfed, which it probably will at some point, again, because it's a very difficult stat to balance. These two are much safer from itemization nerfs than Riven and Pantheon are. Oops. So she's okay. I just think that Fiora and Camille are just better options. Akali is another one who's really good. She is very good with the Gunblade, which is strong right now. I think she doesn't have as much kill potential pre-6 as these two do, but she might have more post-6. I don't know. I feel like there are obviously some good Akali players out there, like Professor Akali, and then the MLGB Blade or whatever guy at the top is an Akali player. So there are some good Akali players. I just feel like these two are probably better, but Akali can be strong. Jax is another one. Jax is debatable. Jax could definitely be up here as well. He's another Triforce Hydra user, Titanic Hydra Triforce. I feel like he's a bit more predictable and easier to outplay. Like, I feel like especially Fiora can outplay him, and I feel like Camille can probably outplay him. But Jax does snowball very hard, and if he gets ahead, if he gets a couple of items, he can definitely kill some people. So Jax could very easily be up here as well. He's He's harder than it seems to play him. I mean, he looks like he's just a simple jump on him auto attack champion, but he has several resets that are pretty complicated. And I'm not a Jax master, but I know especially with like Titanic Hydra, you can jump in, attack, do whatever his reset is. Is it his Q? It's his crushing. It's his W. So you can attack, W, attack, Hydra, attack, and then you could get like 4 autos in there pretty quickly, or 3 autos really quickly. Like there are a lot of attack resets, and just like really weird like animation cancels and resets. So he's not as hard as obviously as someone like a probably like a Fiora or certainly a Riven, but he's got some intricacies to him where you can really tell the difference between a good Jax and a bad Jax. Or you can't tell, like, usually watching him, you'll be like, how is that Jax doing so much damage? It's because he's resetting his auto attacks and using Titanic Hydra properly. If you're a Jax player, you can definitely start to feel a difference if you play him and you one-trick him. So Jax is another one who's very good top lane that you could potentially one-trick. He has it rough in some metas. And once again, I'm not sure about the exact matchups up there, but I feel like he has a worse laning phase than these two. Yasuo is another one. Really high skill cap. I just think he falls off pretty hard late game. I know everyone loves to play him. He's a ton of fun. I just wouldn't do it. There aren't a lot of top Yasuo players near the top end of the ladder. There's a couple, obviously. There's the guy, Yasuo. He does get more rewarding if you play him more. He can't... You know, he's okay. If you're really good with him, you can definitely climb. I would rather play Fiora or Camille most of the time, but... And then Singed is kind of an odd duck. Singed is just weird. If you're really good on Singed, you know, if you know how to proxy, he just, like, a really good Singed player can be very difficult to deal with. And historically, he's almost always difficult to deal with if you're good with him. Now, he's probably not going to get you into Challenger, but he can certainly get you up through Bronze, Silver, Gold, maybe even Platinum with Singed. But he's really weird. He's very risky, you know, because he dies a lot. And, you know, there's always kind of this meme, you feed with Singed to win the game. But a lot of times you just feed with Singed and you lose the game. So, you know, and he falls off as the game length goes on, which is kind of weird. So he's okay. I mean, he's a very simple champion as well to learn. I wouldn't recommend him, but if you want something that's simpler and you don't want to play Pantheon, I think Singed could be an okay choice. We gotta pick it up. Gotta pick it up. Okay, so that's it. Jungle. Okay, I think number 1 is Master Yi for most ELOs. If you've never seen a very good Master Yi player, this might seem strange to you because you almost never see him in pro play. And he's kind of somewhat of a rare pick, and there's a lot of bad Master Yis out there. But he can definitely take off. I mean, if you look at the win rate, it starts getting very high when you're good with him. And the reason that Master Yi is strong, he has a lot of diverse itemization paths, so he can't get nerfed out by items. It's rare for him to just outright get nerfed. And he seems like he's just a stupid, like, face roll, like, easy champion, but he's actually not. And a lot of it comes from his Alpha Strike making him untargetable. You'll notice a lot of these champions have something like that. Like Camille has the untargetable capability. Got the Alpha Strike untargetable. Fiora can cancel abilities with her riposte. So, like, pretty reactive canceling skills. Man, that's a bad way to phrase it. They can outplay people. That's the best way to say it. They have a lot of outplay potential. Okay, that's a very common thing with a lot of these top-end one-trick champions, and that's what separates bad champions, or bad players on those champions from good ones. And it's very annoying if you go against Master Yi. Like, for instance, Master Yi, if I play Lulu, Master Yi can Alpha Strike the Polymorph. Polymorph has a travel time, so if he sees Lulu casting Polymorph, he can Alpha Strike, and it cancels the Polymorph. Or, you know, like a Nautilus Missile, or just anything that tries to target him gets canceled when he Alpha Strikes. So really smart Master Yis will hold on to that Alpha Strike, and they'll run at somebody just until they're about to do an ability, and then he'll Alpha Strike to cancel that ability, basically. And he can also reset tower aggro as well. So you can go in, attack a few times. Right when he's about to take a tower shot or two, he can alpha strike, cancel the tower shot, and then the tower reprioritizes. If there's a minion there, it'll start targeting the minion again instead of him. And so there's just a lot of sneaky stuff. If you've seen a good Master Yi, you know, like he might go in and like tower dive somebody, and you think, what is he doing? He's suiciding. And he might do something like alpha strike in with 1/3 of his health, kill somebody, take one tower shot, and before the second one hits him, he might alpha strike to an enemy minion that's right there, for example, and redirect the tower aggro to his own minion. Or he might meditate to gain a lot of armor, take one tower strike, wait until the alpha strike comes off cooldown for another second, and then alpha strike and dodge. So there's so many different things he can do to outplay enemy skill shots and to help him dive towers. And so that makes him really, really dangerous for a good player. And then he has the hallmarks of just a super snowbally, hardcore, unstoppable champion. He's a champion that can literally 1v5 if he gets fed enough and they don't have enough crowd control, or he doesn't alpha strike properly to dodge the crowd control. But he does so much damage. He has a ton of scaling with his abilities, with his double strike. The double strike applies Ginsu's Rage Blade, so you can, you know, double strike, and each one of those strikes counts as a tick towards Ginsu. So when you double strike, then you're getting 3 strikes, because you get 1 strike, and then your second strike strikes twice. Or you get 2 strikes, your second one, yes, is the Ginsu, so that hits twice instead of once. So you get 3 hits. If you have Ginsu's with this, and that's 3 procs of Blather and King. It gets really nasty, especially with his on-hit build. I think is the best one, where it is Blather and King into Ginsu's, I think. I mean, I'm not a grandmaster of that. He can also go Infinity Edge. So it's very, even if they nerfed Ginsu's for some reason, I don't think they would. There's only a few niche champions that use that, or Blather and King, they have nerfed that several times last season, and it's still very good on him. Or even if they nerf Infinity Edge. Infinity Edge is another build he can go. He can still be really strong because he can switch over to on-hit. So he's very versatile on his item pass. He's very hard to nerf out. And he farms very well early game. He can get some kills, once again, because he can tower dive so well. He doesn't have crowd control, but he can tower dive very well. He can get, he can take dragons really early. He can go steal enemy camps very well if he wants to play the counter jungle game. Once he gets 6, he can 1v1 a lot of champions in the jungle. He obviously takes towers very well. He takes barons really fast. He's pretty good in team fights as long as he flanks and, you know, waits until people get low, then goes in for cleanup duty. So he just has a lot of different ways that he can win. He can win by splitting. He can win by objectives. He can win by team fights. He's just very difficult to stop when he gets ahead. And so he just has all the hallmarks of a great one-trick champion. So, you know, if you want to one-trick somebody and get a lot of elo, I mean, I know somebody I'm friends with on League who's a Diamond 3 one-trick Master Yi. You don't see a lot of Challenger one-tricks, but you can get as high as into Diamond with Master Yi really easily. This is a very popular booster champion. This is what, like, Challenger players will play when they're being paid to boost accounts in silver or gold or whatever. Because he's just very difficult to stop if you know what you're doing. Another one that I put on here is Kha'Zix. Now, the second one was kind of difficult. There are a lot of good one-tricks, like Shaco's a good one-trick, Nidalee's a good one-trick. But I could put Kha'Zix here. Kha'Zix is almost always relevant. He's very strong right now. You know, my one hesitation is he is kind of reliant on lethality items. But, you know, he can still be decent if you're really good on him, even without lethality being strong. And they have changed and nerfed him a lot historically. So he's been a very difficult champion to balance. Yeah, they nerfed him. Yeah, they nerfed him earlier this season several times. Like, a lot. And then, yeah, they nerfed him at the end of last season a lot. So they've nerfed him a lot over time, but he's still very relevant. He's coming back into the fold. They did give him some buffs to his Q. He did benefit a lot from the preseason, so he got extra damage on his Q, he got extra damage on his passive, a lot of extra damage on his Void Spike, and he got a lot of extra AD. And he got extra bonus armor. So he was one of the greatest beneficiaries of some of the preseason bonuses. And he's very good with Electrocute, because he gets a lot of bonus AD. So that makes Kha'Zix particularly strong. Now, once again, he's going to be down the list, as they all are. A lot of these one tricks that I recommend, because they need to be off the radar. Now, he is going to get some attention in pro play, most likely. I highly suspect if pro play was going on right now, you would see a decent chunk of Kha'Zix. Probably. Now, he can potentially have problems. He's also pretty good with Dark Harvest. So there's several, so even if Electrocute gets nerfed or Dark Harvest gets nerfed, he has a couple of different builds that he's pretty good with. He's great with Sudden Impact because he goes invisible a lot. Pretty good with Coup de Grace. That gets nerfed. He's still, I think Eyeball Collection's getting nerfed. There are a lot of different things, a lot of different runes that can be good on him, and items. Obviously, you know, if Duskblade, Black Cleaver, and Ghostblade are viable, he likes those. And he does have problems with tanks, but he's so good. He has great resets. He has a great ability to kind of sneak around with his ultimate. He does a ton of damage. One-on-one, it's almost impossible to beat him. He can invade and beat up almost any other jungler. He can catch people out who are trying to split push, isolated. So he has a lot of potential to kill people, and he has resets. So he's not the greatest split pusher like Master Yi. You know, he doesn't quite have the late... I mean, he does have dueling potential, but like a Fiora or a Camille will take him out. But he's just a very snowbally champion. But he does well early, too. So that's the thing, is like early game, he has a high win rate, but then he also has a high win rate later in the game. And he, as you can see, he has a really nice, smooth win rate, all the way up to almost 59% if you're experienced on him right now. So I think Kha'Zix is very, very good. He's not super difficult mechanically, but you have to kind of know when you should go in and when you shouldn't. So I think he's pretty legit. That's who I would pick in terms of someone else that has a lot of influence. Other people that can historically be pretty good on kind of the easy side, I would prefer Rammus. Rammus is getting a lot of attention. He has been nerfed recently. But historically, he's almost always going to be good in solo queue. He has excellent ganks, excellent roaming, really good scaling, pretty good clear speed. Now, he doesn't do a ton of damage, so he's not going to take over a game like a Master Yi or Kha'Zix, but, you know, he's going to have a huge influence and impact because of his ganking, his ability to take towers really quickly with his ultimate, and just his ability to tank. Sometimes you need a tank if everyone else is playing things like Fiora, Taliyah, Twitch, like someone's got to play a tank. And the jungle is one of the best places to play it. And I think Rammus is the least likely to get nerfed out of contention. And he has very good, like I said, a very good early game and clear. Like Sejuani could be in there too. I suspect she'll probably get nerfed again though. But Sej is not as strong early game. But she definitely starts taking off late game. So Sejuani could be a decent one trick. I'm just a little scared because she gets so much pro attention that she could potentially get nerfed out. And there's not very much skill to her at all. I mean, there's a little bit, but she doesn't have a very high skill cap, which means that people in solo queue will be able to abuse her as well because there's not really a high barrier to entry. I mean, obviously with Rammus, there's not a high barrier to entry either. I just feel like Rammus just has more influence in the early game and can snowball harder. And he takes objectives, well, not like Dragon and Baron, but he takes towers a lot faster than she does. So I would prefer Rammus, but, you know, Sejuani is another good option. Shaco is another classic one-trick champion who can be really good. It's possible he should be up here instead of Kha'Zix, because Kha'Zix is going to get more pro attention. Like, Shaco is virtually never going to be played in pro play, so there's very, very little risk that he's going to get nerfed. And he has a variety of builds that he can use as well. So, itemization, yeah, lethality's good on him, but if they get rid of it, I mean, he can build all kinds of weird items. Like, I've seen him, you know, at one point he was building Trinity Force. You know, he can build, like, some of the Hydras. He's got Ravenous here. There are just a lot of different options. I mean, he could build just about anything and that has AD on it and be effective. Now, he's really weird. I would just recommend, if you want to know more about him, there's probably, like, YouTubers. I think, like, Shake Alone. I don't know if that guy plays anymore. But there are some people out there that you want to watch for this, because he's very rare. You don't see him in a lot of games. But if you do one-trick him, he can be very, very effective. He actually wins more in later games. Wow, that is weird. I know he wins a lot early, but he actually wins, like, almost 56% late game. And you're going to win a lot if you start playing him. Now, this goes down a little bit. But still, 55 is respectable. He's getting played a little bit more now. Yeah, he's like under the radar, like sneaky, really powerful. And there are a lot of things about him. You know, one thing with his ultimate, just like a lot of the others, is he can dodge skill shots. So if you cast his ultimate in that split second when he splits apart into with his clone, then it actually cancels any kind of skill shot that's coming at him. So that's a really powerful, neat trick that you can do with him. And then obviously you can do all kinds of tricks with his clone. You can run the clone out and try to bait a skill shot. You can use your clone and just like run around. You know, there's so many things you can run around and control that clone while you're controlling yourself to really fake people out. You know, it's really easy for him to get around wards because he can hop over walls. Now, that was a lot more powerful before the blast plants are in the game, but it's still a really good ability. He can just sneak up and assassinate the backline. You know, he could go in there with his boxes and just like totally cheese people and invade their jungle. I've seen people get completely shut down by a Shaco in their jungle. Just has boxes everywhere, and you just can't go stop him because he's got your jungle warded up, and if allies try to come, they might run into the boxes and get killed. So it's just a nightmare going against a good Shaco that just starts early ganking and taking over. So yeah, he can either go Dark Harvest or Domination. And like I said, I don't know this, like all the tricks of the trade. There's so many different sneaky things you can do with Shaco. You just look him up if you're interested in him. But yeah, he's a very good one trick. I've seen it. I know it. Statistically, it makes sense. His abilities are all pretty. A lot of them are complicated and interesting, especially with his clone and his invisibility. All right, Nidalee's another one, extremely hard to play, lots of auto attack resets. You have 6 different abilities if you include all your Cougar abilities. She has to take over the game early or she's going to be trash later most of the time, so she's a really risky pick. But if you're really good on Nidalee, you can make it work. One problem with Nidalee, though, is if she is ever pretty good, she's going to get a lot of pro attention because there are a lot of pro players out there that love to play her. So she might get nerfed because of that. Yeah, she definitely goes downhill big time as the game goes on. But as you get better on her, then the win rate definitely goes up a lot too. So she's all right. She's pretty good. Nice AP option if you want some AP in the jungle. Elise is another one I could have put on here. Warwick's another simple option. Just has a nice point click ult. You know, he can get a lot of lifesteal. I saw a Warwick that went something like, I think he went Ravenous Hydra, Spirit Visage, and like, I don't remember what else, like Trinity Force or something, and he was virtually unkillable. Especially if the enemy doesn't have Ignite or get Executioner's Calling. That can be really strong. Looks like it's probably going to be an hour. An hour on this. Maybe one day I can get it down to 20 to 30. There's just so much I want to talk about. Graves is another one. I think Kha'Zix is the best sort of lethality user out of the Rengar Graves Kha'Zix kind of trifecta that was popular earlier this season. But Graves can be really good too. He just doesn't quite have as much sneakiness as Kha'Zix does, although he has much higher burst, especially from range. So Graves can definitely get you there too. And then Sejuani's alright. Now, I deliberately don't have Lee on here. I know Lee is one of the most popular junglers. He probably is the most popular jungler of all time. But he's very risky early on. And he's really hard to play correctly. I know it's cool to insec and kick people back, but I don't like, he gets a lot of pro attention. If he's ever useful or if he's ever like good, then he's going to get nerfed out. He definitely can carry. I just feel like there's a lot more counterplay to him than other champions. Maybe it's just because I play Janna a lot and Janna completely crushes him and Thresh completely crushes him, and I play both of those quite a lot. But I just feel like there are a lot of answers to Lee. He's just super dependent on snowballing very hard early. I just don't think he does enough. Like, he does a lot of damage early, but then he kind of transitions into this tankish sort of thing later. I don't know. I mean, if you really like Lee, you can definitely make it work, but... And there are a lot... Obviously, pro players are very good with him and play him and win a lot in solo queue as well. I don't know. If you like Lee, go for it. It's just, he's kind of like Yasuo to me. I think you're just working really hard, and I just think there are other options that are just going to be better to one trick than Lee. You know, I just would rather play Kha'Zix. He has a killer early game as well, but he scales much better into, like, if he gets ahead, he could snowball really hard and take over the whole game with his items. He just does so much more damage than Lee later in the game, I think. So, I don't know. It's up to you. Lee's okay. I would rather play, if you like a Lee type of champion who just like can pound people early, take over, I'd rather just play Kha'Zix probably. Okay, mid lane, Taliyah, number 1, I think. Now you might be asking, well, I ban Kassadin all the time in solo queue if you watch my stream, so why don't I put Kassadin here? Kassadin is, he doesn't have a lot of great wave clear early on. His roaming is pretty good, and he is a target for potential nerfs, right? So, I don't know. Like, Kassadin, it's tough, because Kassadin definitely can't be up here in one tricks. I'm a little scared that he's going to get nerfed at some point, and people can exploit his lack of wave clear, especially at higher elos. Now, Taliyah potentially could be nerfed as well, but the thing about Taliyah, she has excellent roaming as well. She has really good poke. Now, the reason that I banned Kassadin also is he's so simple to play. Like, a monkey can play this champion. That's why I have him on honorable mentions. You just, like, mash your hand on the keyboard, and, you know, you'll just win the game, basically. Once you get Rod of the Ages plus Lichbane, he's just ridiculously easy to play. He doesn't even have a skill shot. He's ridiculous. However, with Taliyah, there are a lot of bad Taliyah players out there, and that's the difference. If everyone was like, you know, a super good Taliyah player, I would ban Taliyah over Kassadin. But because Kassadin's such a monkey champion, then I ban Kassadin, because it's much more likely you're going to find a high-impact Kassadin than a high-impact Taliyah. Now, Taliyah's not going to be super high up this priority list, I don't think. Malzahar's the same kind of thing. Like, a monkey can play Malzahar. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that those type of champions, when they get too strong, they're really simple to play champions. That's usually a red flag for getting nerfed at some point. Whereas, once again, champions that are gated by some degree of skill, like a Twisted Fate or like a Taliyah, are less likely to get nerfed. Anything that's like point click you win, it's going to get nerfed at some point. Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is insane. It starts at 50% and goes up to 63% win rate once you're experienced with this champion, because she's the total package. She has huge burst damage. She has pretty good engage from a long range with her W, so you can serve as an engaged champion. You can follow up if, you know, someone else engages. You can blow them up. You have a ton of damage. You have really good roam with your ult. You have excellent wave clear. You have excellent scaling. You have a pretty good early game. You have a really good late game. She's pretty flexible with her itemization. I mean, they already nerfed her mana. Like, they nerfed her several times this season, and she just changed up her build a little bit. If for some reason they nerfed Morello, she could easily switch over and maybe, I don't know. I mean, that'd be rough if they nerfed Morello. But in theory, she could do something like a Rod of the Ages and probably still be all right. So she's pretty resilient in terms of her build. A lot of these items, I would say, are not high on the docket for getting nerfed. Like, they'll probably leave these alone, I would think. And she doesn't particularly need any specific rune either, so she's not super dependent on Airy. Like, she can use Phase Rush as well. Mana Flow Band is nice on her. That could get a nerf at some point, but she's just very resilient. She's going to be good in a lot of different metas. She's already been nerfed a few times, and she's still really strong. And she's just got the total package. I mean, she's got it all. She's got damage. She's got roam. She has engage. I mean, I guess she doesn't take objectives super fast. That's a thing. But whatever. Like, she's really, really good. She's a champion if you're good on her. I mean, this is the champion that people who make Smurfs, like Challenger players or Diamond players, who make Smurfs and just want to climb and try to get back to Diamond or whatever as fast as possible, they will play Taliyah. She's just number one. Either Taliyah or Twisted Fate. And Twisted Fate's my next one here. I mean, there's a guy called Mid Beast who talks about these champions all the time and plays them all the time, who does these, you know, unranked to Diamond or unranked to Challenger accounts all the time. I think he's in, I'm pretty sure he's Australian. He's really cool. I like watching his stuff. Be sure to check him out. Mid Beast. Just YouTube him. He talks about these champions a lot, and there are a lot of other players if you look at him. And he has guides on these champions too, so check that out too. I don't have guides on them, but he does, so I'll give him a shout out. He seems like a good guy. He's got some good content out there. Yeah, Twisted Fate is very similar. Has really good wave clear, has great CC with his gold card, has excellent roam with his ult. He can take towers really well, really good scaling in terms of damage, rarely picked, rarely banned. He's just awesome. He's a solo queue master. And so Where? There's Twisted Fate. Yeah, so I mean, he has like a 2-second stun on his gold card once you level his cards up. And he gets a lot of extra gold from his passive. I mean, he's great. I think he probably goes up. He's getting kind of up there. He's like top 12. So he's probably on the radar a little bit, but I doubt it. I almost never see him in my games. Excuse me. I really don't think he's probably going to get the nerf bat. And once again, he's resilient. You know, he likes to get Rod of the Ages. He could easily get Morello if they nerf Rod for some reason. Resilient Champion doesn't require any specific runes. Comet's nice on him if they nerf it, whatever. He can get something else. Just a very resilient champion just because of his ability to push and roam, which is the same thing Taliyah does, push and roam. He's going to be strong. Now, he also has really good tower taking capabilities because he gets Glitch Bane. So that's another thing to consider, is that he is very good at objectives as well. So he doesn't quite have as much just like eye-popping damage as Taliyah does, and that's why he's a little bit lower, but he makes up for that by having really good tower damage. Okay, Kass, I mentioned him before. The most ridiculous, overpowered champion. I think the champions that need to be nerfed the most right now are Jarvan, Ezreal, and Kassadin. But once again, you know, because he's so strong, he has to have a bullseye on his head. Like, Rito's got to nerf this guy at some point. And historically, he's very difficult to balance as well. Like, he is either ridiculously overpowered or he's just obscure and awful. And so that makes him kind of a tough one to want to one trick, because you just never know. Are they finally gonna like nerf him into the ground or not? Because he takes a lot of reduced magic damage. He gets a repeatable shield on his Q. All of his abilities have really high ratios, 0.7, 0.7, 0.7. Each ability does damage. His R doesn't seem to do a lot of damage, only has a 0.3, but he also gets 2% of his maximum mana there. So he's super mobile. He has a 2-second flash, level 16, 4 seconds, at level 11. A flash that also does a lot of damage. He's disgusting with that Presence of Mind Mastery, which they just buffed. So he can just like just spam that like 3 or 4 times, Presence of Mind, and just like literally one-shot people. I'm sure there's YouTube videos about it out there. Yeah, it's disgusting. He wins a ton. Yeah, this thing. So yeah, he's really tanky because he builds Rod of the Ages. He has the 15% magic reduction. He gets that repeatable shield on his Q. It's on a low cooldown. He's super mobile, and he does a ton of damage. Now, his one weakness is he doesn't have a lot of wave clear. He doesn't have wave clear, and he doesn't have good objective taking. Actually, his objective taking's okay, because he does get Lich Bane. So he can take towers all right if he can walk up and melee them. But he's just ridiculously strong. I mean, if you want kind of a simpler champion, just a one-trick and gain a lot of elo right now, Kass in every game that he's not banned. So I'd recommend him like for right now as a patch 7.23, Kassadin. But just like historically, and like moving forward, if you really want to invest the time and be pretty sure your champion's probably not going to get nerfed completely out of the meta, probably Taliyah or Twisted Fate. Especially like Twisted Fate is almost certainly not going to get touched. Taliyah maybe, but I doubt it. At least not anytime soon. Malzahar's another one, but once again, he's got a bullseye on him. He'll probably get nerfed. Very simple champion to play. He has excellent push. So he's kind of like Kassadin in that he has less damage than Kassadin and less mobility, but he has excellent push, excellent roaming, you know, good lockdown CC, excellent objective taking. You know, he can take dragons really quickly with all of his little minions. So Malzahar is awesome. They had thought about nerfing him next patch. I don't know if those nerfs are actually going to go through, but he's definitely on the block to get nerfed. But he is really good. And he's another one. Very simple, easy solo queue champion. Very unlikely to get nerfed. Simple, ton of damage, decent wave clear. Very easy to farm with. It's almost impossible to miss CS with her in lane. You can just spam your fireball and get refunded for it. And then just really good threat, all in. Level 6, kill somebody. Well, everybody knows it's coming, but people still die to it a lot of the time, so it's really strong for her. Katarina's another one who's really good. She might get a nerf, but she's really good right now because of Electrocute. I won't go into that too much, but if you look at Electrocute, it has an AD ratio and an AP ratio. And so the fact that she gets Gunblade first makes her do a lot of damage. And her passive also has an AD and an AP ratio. And some of the adaptive runes that give extra AP and AD also sort of rotate around to help her maximize her damage as well early on. So she's really well optimized currently with the itemization and runes. That could change in the future. She could get a nerf. She is susceptible to crowd control a little bit more than these. Like Taliyah and Twisted Fate can play further back. Kassadin's kind of tanky, and the Malzahar has his shield and his lockdown. So she doesn't have any crowd control, and she's a bit more susceptible to crowd control herself, but she's really, really strong as well if you want to one-trick her. And then Syndra, classic, very good as well. Pretty high skill cap, but has nice crowd control from a distance, and still does a ton of damage with her ultimate, so she's pretty good to one-trick. She's a very popular booster champion. And then Azir is another one who's coming back into play. Very hard to play, but also very strong. Pretty good with the current runes. Pretty good in the current environment. And he pays off quite a bit, I believe, as well, if you play him a lot. I have a friend that plays him a lot. Yeah, pretty decent. Not as hardcore as like Taliyah, but, you know, you can get it up to like 53, 54% with him. Pretty resilient as well. You know, I feel like Nashor's is good. It looks like more people are going for Rod of the Ages. Some people go Morello. There are a lot of different things you can build on him, but I think he's a pretty good one-trick. We're at an hour. All right, 80 carry. Twitch, easy answer. Twitch is almost always going to be a good champion because he can go invisible. That's it. And solo queue, anything that can go invisible and sneak up on you is going to be strong. You know, Kha'Zix, Shaco, not anything. I guess like Eve and Rengar can still be powerful as well in the right circumstances. But yeah, that's part of it. His only rough part is the early game. And right now, because you can take Doran's shield and a lot of supports are taking Targon's Brace, then you're going to get a lot of healing in lane. You can also take the little, I forgot what it's called. It's like a tongue licking a blade thing that heals you in lane in the red tree. Let me see. They can give you a bit more lifesteal. No one's going that. Wow, really? Okay, I guess. I don't know. Anyways, you have some lifesteal options if you want it. Like, he can go Bork if you need to go Bork. So if Infinity Edge gets nerfed for some reason, he can just switch over and go Bork. So he's versatile. I think Infinity Edge is still the best right now. But you do have the option of going Bork. If you're in a really, really hard lane, you can, in theory, go, like, you know, Doran's Shield plus Vamp Scepter or something like that if you have to early on and just go Bork Hurricane. It's going to be a little bit less damage, a lot less damage than Infinity Edge, but it's going to give you more sustain. And so he can have a rough early game, but you have tools that you can, you know, adapt to play around that. And then he can assassinate people. He can creep up later in the game, assassinate people, and he has really, really awesome team fighting. So he's one of the few 80 carries that's very good at one-on-one and is very good at team fighting. He can open up. He has 850 range on his ult. Good Twitch players will, like, abuse that to the max. I mean, look at that. It's like almost 58% on good Twitch players. The only time when, I mean, I guess like the first 20 minutes, he's marginally a little bit below average in terms of winning, and then it just goes through the roof later on. And so he's great. I mean, he's been really good a lot, and he just doesn't get a lot of pro play. He gets some. He got some at Worlds, but it's rare. And I would suspect he's not going to get nerfed that much. And if I had to pick someone who's going to get really powerful really soon, I'd probably pick Twitch, because the next two on this list are Ezreal and Misfortune, who are the strongest right now. But they draw so much solo queue attention that they are going to get nerfed. Like 100% Ezreal. I know he's getting a nerf next patch, and he'll probably get more. Misfortune is likely to get nerfed. And Twitch, I think they'll probably leave alone. I think he'll survive it. But even if they nerf him, just the fact that he can go invisible and has 850 range, like multi-target hit ultimate that stacks on hit abilities, is just nasty. And he gets resets. So, like, if you get a kill in a team fight, let's say you're on the back line, you open up 850, you go boom, 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 kill somebody, then that assassin starts running at you on the back line, just press Q again, go invisible, just wait until someone deals with the assassin, pop back up, boom, 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 kill him again. So it's just gross. And it's really hard to gank him because he can just go invisible and run away. A lot of people won't carry extra pink wards to drop to find him. I do. But a lot of people won't. And so, you know, he has really nice escape in lane as well. He's pretty difficult to gank. So yeah, he's my number one. The other one, and you could argue that Draven could be number one as well, but I think Twitch is just a little bit more well-rounded than Draven. But Draven is obviously like the go-to number one one-trick champion. He has a ton of damage early on. They have nerfed him a couple of times. They nerfed his snowball capabilities, but he gets a ton of extra gold. He has a ton of damage. He has very versatile build path. He scales really hard in late game. He can almost 1 to 2 shot people late game. You won't see him in pro play or challenger level play that much because his axe is where they're going to land. Obviously, that's telegraphed and it allows people to hit skill shots on him a lot easier. So, you know, there's a decent chance that you won't see him on a lot of streams or in pro games, but trust me, if you run into a good Draven, he is very, very impressive. So, I play with a couple of people that have at one point one-tricked Draven. It's kind of like a meme on that channel. I like to make fun of people for one-tricking Draven. I don't care. I think one-tricking Draven's awesome, but, you know, Queen X especially takes that as an insult to call somebody a one-trick Draven player. But Draven is very, very hard to play correctly. That's another thing that makes him a good one-trick, is a lot of people just can't pull it off. I've tried to play Draven. He's very hard. He's a lot harder than Twitch. I don't know why people don't just play Twitch every game. To me, he's very easy to play, and he's super overpowered. Like, in every meta in solo queue, people just don't like him because he's a dirty rat. I don't know. But Draven, it makes sense why people don't play him as much, because he's really hard to play correctly. But he is really, really good. Other choices here, Misfortune. Once again, she's probably on the chopping block. She might make it for a few more patches. I think Ezreal is going to be the first powerhouse right now to fall. But Misfortune's super good, very easy to play. She's kind of my easy pick on here. Twitch is pretty easy too, but excellent lane bully, really good scaling, excellent team fighting ultimate. She's not super great at one-on-ones, but she's the queen of team fighting. You just press R from a huge distance, just melt everybody. She's awesome. Pretty good utility with her slow. It allows other allies to hit skill shots. So if you put the, you know, make it rain on somebody, you know, Taliyah can hit her knockup, or Sejuani can hit her ultimate, or, you know, that can slow him down enough for Twisted Fate to get in range to gold card somebody. Like, there's so many different ways that helps out. It can let your Morgana support hit that bind, Thresh to hit a hook, Blitz to hit a hook. So she just has a lot of synergies with other champions. She's really, really strong early, and she has great team fighting later. So, once again, she doesn't have a lot of mobility. She's very easy to gank and kill. I mean, she does. She can press W and run away, but that's, you know, that's not going to be that great. That gets canceled if you take damage. So she's really susceptible to ganks, but she can be good. Kalista's another one. This is a really high skill cap champion that gets a lot of pro attention. So a lot of times she's nerfed pretty hard, but if you're really good on her right now, she almost never gets a ban in solo queue. She's super, super strong. Especially with on-hit builds. If Critical Strike ever gets nerfed, she'd be one of the biggest beneficiaries of that. But she's still really good with... if Press the Attack gets nerfed as well, which I think it is next patch, she's going to love that a lot. Because she would really rather have lethal tempo. And she's very good with sudden impact. So she's good with different runes right now, and she has nice utility. She can... you know, guarantee that you're going to get the Baron or you're going to get the Dragon. She can outsmite people. She's really good at kiting, like, slow tank type of champions. She has great utility with her ultimate to either save your support who's doing something stupid, or to help initiate into a team fight, to throw your Alistar into a team fight. And it catches people off guard. You know, like, you just stick all of those... you know, spears in somebody, and like a Janna has to figure out when she's going to shield, and you can just wait on that shield to fall off, and then use your Ren to finish them off. So it just catches people off guard a lot that aren't used to playing her, how much that Ren does. And that's the reason why you have to play her a lot to be good with her, is because you have to know, well, how many spears do I need in somebody before I can kill them, right? And that's difficult to know. You just have to have experience to kind of figure that out. She's really good. Vayne's another one who can be really good if you one-trick her. You know, she's very mobile. She can dodge a lot of skill shots. She's pretty good in an assassin meta. She's pretty good against tanks. She just has a terrible laning phase. She doesn't have a lot of burst damage. And she's really short range, so she's terrible at sieging, but she's awesome at 1v1. And she's awesome at just skirmishing. You know, in team fights, a good Vayne who can reposition, you know, use the condemn to knock people away or pin them into walls. Very, very high skill cap champion. But if you get good with her, you can be good. The problem is most Vaynes are not good. So I personally do not like seeing her that much on my team. She's super popular right now because of the new skin. But there's no denying that she does get very strong later into the game, especially if you're a good player with her. So she can be a good one-trick. And then Varus, Cog, Tristana. I mean, Cog and Tristana are always going to do a ton of damage. Trist is just really easy to play. You know, you can W and jump away from stuff. You can knock people away with your ultimate. So very safe champion. And then Kog'Maw just does a ton of damage. You just have to worry about your positioning a lot. You're very easy to pick off. And then Varus just has a lot of utility. Has a lot of different builds. You know, he's got his ultimate. He can poke. He has a healing debuff, which is very nice against certain champions with his W. So he's pretty good. Pretty good early, pretty good late. He has 575 range, so he can harass in lane and safely last hit. So just a pretty good sort of jack of all trades, well-rounded champion. You know, his damage is not going to be as high as something like a Twitch most of the time, although it can get pretty high. And he's not going to have as much safety as something like a Tristana, but he's just a good middle-of-the-line kind of champion. And then finally, why most people probably showed up to this to hear about the supports, we've got the support. So we've got Thresh and Rakan. So I think Thresh is easily the number one-trick champion. As I think I explained earlier, he's the hardest support to play, and historically he has been the most impactful support, both in pro play and in solo queue if you're really good with him. Most pro players get their name out there by being really good Thresh players. Like, every pro player will be a good Thresh player, probably. Like, some will be better than others, but all of them can play Thresh competently. That's just like that's a rite of passage. You're applying to play at a pro team. Okay, let's see your Thresh. I'm sure that's part of the tryouts. Let's see your Thresh. Because he is a super high impact champion. And the reason for that is he's just very versatile. He can engage with his hook. He can disengage with his flay. He can save allies with Lantern. He can use Lantern aggressively to pull junglers in. Like, there are so many different decisions and options with him that you can make. And he has pretty high mechanical skill. Like, so not only do you have to choose, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to follow up this hook? Am I going to use the Lantern to save an ally? Or am I going to go in and pull another ally in to help with the fight? But you also have to actually hit the hook. It's a very slender skill shot. It has a slight delay on it. He's a very popular champion. A lot of people play him. And so a lot of people know what that animation looks like, and they're going to be able to dodge it. Like, at Platinum Plus, it's going to be really hard to hit anybody with an open field hook. It's just not going to happen a lot of the time. You have to be in a bush where they can't see you, or you have to do something sneaky. You know, you have to, like, weave it through minions or something like that. It's very difficult to hit most people with a hook. The best time to hit them is when they're distracted by something else. So when they're focusing on a CS, or when they're trying to go for your ally, or they're trying to run away from something. That's the best time. Like, his hook is a lot harder to hit than something like a Blitz hook or a Nautilus hook. Those have much fatter hitboxes and much faster animations. So Thresh is deliberately balanced around his hook being a very difficult skill shot to hit. And then the flay is also very difficult mechanically. It's really weird if you want to flay people backwards, which is usually what you want to do. You have to, like, put the cursor behind you at just the right angle, and you have to know, like, the range on the flay. It's a very, like, strange, like, a very strange range. Like, it's kind of close range, but it's a little bit further than you would think. So you have to make difficult decisions, and you have to be able to pull off some of the harder mechanical skill shots in the game. But his skill ceiling is very, very high. He's very impactful, very versatile. You know, you can put all kinds of different items on him and runes on him and be very effective. So he's just awesome. And the chart shows that too. I mean, you can get up to like 55% with him, which is really nice. So really hard to play if you're not, if you're not fully committed to him. You might want to try somebody else, but really hard to play. But he can be very strong, and as you can see, he's trending very well. It's a nice patch for him for sure. Mostly because he can use Aftershock, which is really nice. I talk about that in other videos, though. Why that's such an important rune for supports. And the other one that I'm going to say is Rakan. Now, this is kind of tough. I kind of want to put Janna here as well. Historically, Janna's the most nerfed champion of all time. She's very, very good in solo queue, like always. She's even okay right now, and she's just recently had some massive nerfs, and it's just not in her favor at all right now in the meta. But she's still, like, okay. But Rakan's a new kid on a block. He just came out last year, and he reminds me a lot of Thresh in that he's very versatile. Right, and you get rewarded for playing him well, right? So you start off down here in the gutter when you start playing him, and then you end up way up here when you get good with him. And it's a similar sort of skill set to Thresh, where you have to know when you should go in. If you go in at the wrong time, you're going to die. You have to make sure you have an escape plan to get back out, because he's not tanky usually. So, you're going to want to E back out after you go in. Now, his skill shots aren't as hard as Thresh's, obviously. But he has to get a lot closer. Like Thresh, if he misses his hook, Thresh is still okay most of the time. You just throw your hook. Oops, I missed it. Okay, walk away. Rakan, if you go in at the wrong time with your W, especially if you miss it, you're in big trouble a lot of the time. But he does have shields, and because he has shields and he has a heal off of his Q, then he can use enchanter items. So he's kind of a hybrid between an engaged tank and an enchanter. There's a lot of different things you can build on him in terms of runes and items. And so that means that almost in any meta, he's going to be relevant. He's very hard, relatively guaranteed engage. Like, if you, flash ult W somebody, you're almost always going to hit him. Or even just ult W. It's so fast. It's like an Alistar, but it's even faster. Now it has a more slender hitbox than Alistar. But it's just a really nice hardcore engage, and you can bounce around and tag other people with that as well. And it's on a really low cooldown. So he's a hard engaged champion that has really nice scaling as an enchanter if you need for him to do that. But he can also build and be a bit more of a disruptor with sort of tankiness as well. So I think that positions him very well in the future just to always be a relevant pick. Especially if Zy is good. Obviously he's going to be better, but I think he'll always be good. And the stats kind of bear that out, that as you play him more, you get better with him. Okay, so kind of honorable mentions. Janna was another one. Janna, historically, like, what makes Janna good? I've got an entire guide on Janna. I've talked about her a lot. I played over 600 games with her last season. She's just really good in solo queue because she's the queen of the Fiesta. And a lot of this is she has really long spell ranges on her E. I mean, look at this win rate. Like, you would think Janna is just this, like, stupid, brainless champion, right? And, yeah, she's not as hard to play as Thresh or Rakan, but it definitely shows if you have experience on her. So she goes from down here, 53, 54, all the way up to, like, 57% win rate, which is nice. So she has a high ceiling, or she has a high floor. It's easy to be competent on Janna, but she also has a fairly high ceiling. Because you can interrupt things with your Tornado and your ultimate. You can interrupt, like, Lee trying to go in. You can interrupt Jarvan from doing his flag and drag. You can interrupt like Kha'Zix from trying to jump on you. There are a lot of different things you can do with Janna to make high impact plays. And she just scales through the roof. I mean, her shield has a 0.7 AP ratio on it, and it scales with plus healing and shielding, obviously. And her ult has a huge ratio. I think it's 150% over the course of it. And she's just really fast. Like, don't underestimate speed. She's very fast. And that allows her to rotate around the map and make plays. It allows her to get deeper vision and to try to show up and save people from doing stupid stuff without dying herself. So she's just very hard to kill. She's a squishy champion that's high impact, that's really hard to get a hold of and kill. She's very slippery. She's fast. She has a lot of disengage. And historically, that's just been a recipe for success on Janna. I mean, like I said, she's the most nerfed champion of all time. And she's still very, very high impact. So if you want to one-trick something, Janna is almost always going to be relevant. Even if she's not the best, like right now in a given meta, she's still going to be good. I mean, yeah, she's not the best. She's still 54%. And she just got nerfed really hard, like 2 or 3 times. And she doesn't use the good runes. Like, she doesn't use Aftershock right now. And Aerie just got nerfed also. Like, you just can't nerf this champion out of the game. Like, she's still always going to be good. She will find a way. And so, you know, she could certainly be up there. I still think Thresh is the best one trick, but she could replace Rakan. These two are virtually interchangeable. They're very, very good. Sona's another one, and this is kind of my, like, low mechanical champion. If you don't want to play something that's super hard to play, just play Sona. Now, Sona is getting nerfed really hard next patch, so we'll have to see how that pans out, but historically, Sona's almost always going to be good in solo queue. She scales very well. She has good harass early game. Just a nice, simple champion. She has a good team fight with her ult. She can be strong. Alistar is another one who historically has been very good for similar reasons to Rakan. He has just a good point-click engage that's on a low cooldown, and he's very tanky, so he can tower dive very well, which is really nice in pro play and higher level elo. You can't leverage that as much in lower levels, so you go from down here in like the, 47% or whatever, all the way up to, 58. So Alistar is very strong right now, and he will be in high elo and pro play because he can tower dive so early on. But yeah, really good. Excellent roaming, excellent engage, excellent tower diving, great damage. I haven't had a ton of success with him this season, but I've only played like 5 games on him, and I don't think I had the right runes. I wasn't running Aftershock. I was running Electrocute. That was like the day the patch came out. I played him like 5 times because I thought he'd be really good. I just didn't quite have the build for him right at the time. But if I go back and try him, I'd probably have a lot more success with him. So the Bull, very strong, great itemization. He's very resilient as well. There are a lot of different items you can build with him. Regardless of which runes or whatever he's going to have, he'll almost always be relevant. Just because he's a good, pretty guaranteed hard engaged champion. Zyra's another one for solo queue. She's the queen of AP damage. She has really high base damage. She's getting changed next patch. We'll see how that works out. But very good solo queue champion. Tons of damage. Great poke early. Great all-in damage later. Really good vision control with her plants. Helps you really dominate and take out control wards easily, especially in that pesky tri-bush in the bot lane. So she's good. Soraka, another solo queue warrior. Excellent. It just basically turns the lane into a farm off. It's really hard to kill a Soraka in lane or her lane partner. Pretty versatile in terms of items. Great scaling later into the game. Kind of squishy, if they get a hold of you, especially if you don't end up getting Warmogs. It's like a 5th or 6th item. That can be a problem. But she gets a free pass in the laning phase. Scales really hard in the late game. Kind of has some problems in the mid game if you get caught out in the Fiesta. But she's really, really good in organized team fights, especially if you have tanks on your team. I think she's quite strong. So she's good. And then Blitzcrank's the other one. Blitz is obviously super good, especially bronze, silver, gold. The problem is he's banned all the time in those elos. So it's really hard to play him. And to get an opportunity to play him, I should say. And he just doesn't have the same kind of versatility. Now, this is kind of weird, where he falls way off the wagon if you play him a lot. So he doesn't really have that much in terms of like rewards by learning him. He's just not as versatile as Thresh is. So it's easier to hit his hook, and his hook is more powerful. But his doesn't have the same kind of versatility. He just doesn't have as much peel. He's not as good if your team's behind. He's not as good against tanks. But he still is very strong. If you can actually get him consistently, if for some reason he's not banned a lot, he is a pretty good choice. It's just because he's going to be banned a lot. It says he's not, well, in Platinum Plus he's not banned. What is he in, like, Bronze? Yeah. I mean, I guess he's not banned, like, he's the most banned champion, but it's still only 5%, so you might get to play him. But yeah, he's alright. Who else? There was another, like, honorable mention that I wanted to... I don't know. There are a lot of good support champions. Oh, Leona is someone that I wanted to address. I mean, Leona can be on here as an honorable mention. I just want to see where she gets nerfed. And like I said before, I feel like historically, unless she's overpowered, she's just not viable. There's not a lot of in-between. There's not like an okay patch for Leona. It's either she's really, really good or she's not. Because I just feel like she has to be so overwhelmingly strong to justify playing her over Thresh. which she is right now, but I just think in the long run, I feel like these two would be better, but like right now in this moment as of 7.23, she's better, but we'll see in a couple of patches. Okay, well, my quick little 20 to 30 minute video, that's going to be it. Another hour and a half. Maybe one day I'll get it down. It's just tough for me with my style because I just really like going in. I like getting excited about stuff, going into detail about it, helping people learn more. Maybe one day I'll get it down lower. I guess I could have broken it up into like, 15 minutes for each one of these roles. I just wanted to cover them all in one video, but either way, that's going to be it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.